Welcome to the deep dive. Think about it for a moment. Maybe a time you felt profound sadness, or saw something on the news that just, well, shook you. Or even a quiet struggle, something personal that felt incredibly unfair. In moments like that, this really ancient, unsettling question tends to bubble up, doesn't it? Something people have wrestled with forever across all cultures. Why is there just so much suffering? And it's not just, a philosophical game. It cuts right to the bone. It challenges how we think about justice, about compassion, maybe even about what reality is. Today, we're going on, well, quite a journey. We've got some incredible sources, centuries of deep thought guiding us. We're not just going to analyze this mystery intellectually. We want to explore a really radical shift in perspective, one that might actually redefine suffering itself in the end. Our mission here is to unpack these deep insights, maybe offer you a kind of shortcut to understanding one of life's biggest riddles. Okay, let's unpack this.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? How that question, that deep ache about suffering, it often comes together in what philosophers call the problem of evil.
Mm.
And, this isn't just some modern hang-up. It became much more urgent as our idea of God or the divine evolves over time. If you look way back, some early mythologies like the Babylonian flood story, well, the gods there were often shown as pretty capricious, almost whimsical, drowning the world because humans were too noisy, things like that. In that kind of worldview, suffering was just, well, part of the deal, arbitrary divine power. But then as the idea of God started to combine both total power, omnipotence, and infinite goodness, infinite love, like we see strongly in the Abrahamic traditions, then the fact that suffering still exists became this huge, unavoidable challenge. How do you square that circle? The dilemma is incredibly stark. If God is all-powerful, he can get rid of suffering. And if God is all good, totally loving and compassionate, he would want to get rid of suffering. And yet, here it is. Suffering persists. It's everywhere. Often in these horrific, senseless, just, pointless seeming ways.
So this isn't just some academic debate for theologians, right? It's a deep existential thing that has, well, haunted serious spiritual seekers, reflective people for thousands of years. It's driven so much inquiry into what God is, what reality is, what our place in all this complexity even means. It really forces us to ask, how can a being who is supposed to be perfectly good and all-powerful allow so much pain?
Exactly. That's where it gets really tough, isn't it? When you try to hold all three ideas together, God is all powerful, God is all good. Yet suffering is undeniable. The logical conclusions, they're just stark. And for many people, deeply uncomfortable. It points towards, well, either God isn't really all powerful after all, or maybe not entirely good. Or, and this is the really challenging one for faith, maybe God as we think of him, this benevolent creator, just doesn't exist in that way. This dilemma, as our sources really emphasize, it's not a minor point. It's a genuine crisis for religious belief and a huge test for anyone trying to make sense of their spiritual feelings alongside the world's harshness. It forces you to look hard at what you believe is sacred, what divine really means.
It does. And it's crucial to grasp just how many ways people have tried to tackle this. Our sources mention Professor Arthur Herman, for instance. In his book on the problem of evil in Indian thought, he actually lists, I think, 23 distinct responses. 23. That alone shows you how persistent and perplexing this riddle is across cultures, across time. So maybe let's look at a few of the common theories, especially the ones that came up more in Western thought, and importantly, why they often seem to, well, fall short when you put them up against the raw reality of suffering. Okay, first up, there's a really common one, the testing theory. This is the idea that God allows suffering, maybe even sends it, to test our faith, to see if we'll stay devoted, stay humble, keep doing the right thing even when things are hard. And on the surface, maybe for some individual struggles, you can kind of see it. People do sometimes come out stronger, right?
We've all seen examples of that resilience.
Exactly. But this theory, it just completely breaks down, often cruelly, when you face the huge, inexplicable suffering of innocence. Think about a child dying slowly of starvation somewhere, or animals trapped in a massive fire, or the millions murdered in genocides. What kind of loving test involves that level of utter devastation? Especially for beings who can't possibly understand or consent to it. It suggests a God who's, well, if not cruel, then incredibly detached, or whose idea of a test is just completely alien to our understanding of compassion. It just leaves this big moral gap, doesn't
It
it?
really does. It feels unsatisfying.
So if that one doesn't quite work, there's another idea, the soul-making theory. This suggests suffering is like a necessary fire, a crucible that forges our character, builds resilience, empathy, makes us deeper, stronger, more spiritually mature people. The argument is a world without any pain would leave us shallow, undeveloped. we wouldn't learn compassion. And again, sure, you can point to times when challenges led to growth. Adversity can reveal strength.
Right, personal growth through hardship is a common narrative.
It is. But this theory also hits some serious limits. Does it really make sense for a newborn baby with a terrible congenital disease, constant pain from day one? Or an animal caught in a trap dying slowly? Are they making their souls learning moral lessons? It seems unlikely. And sometimes, let's be honest, suffering doesn't build character. Sometimes it destroys it. It can lead to just overwhelming despair, bitterness, anger, a total breakdown. So it's really hard to argue that all suffering, especially the really extreme, seemingly pointless kind, serves this noble soul-making purpose.
Yeah, that explanation feels thin when faced with extreme cases.
Then there's probably the most common one, especially in Western theology, the free will theory. The idea here is that God gave us his incredible gift, free will, the ability to choose to love or, well, to harm. And so our suffering, or at least a lot of it, comes from us misusing that gift. Our bad choices, our mistakes, our cruelty, our neglect. This kind of shifts the blame away from God and onto us, right? We cause the problems.
Okay, that puts the responsibility on human actions.
It does. But it raises a really tricky question about God's responsibility, doesn't it? I mean, the analogy often used is what kind of loving, all-knowing parent gives their child, metaphorically speaking, a loaded gun and says, do what you want, especially knowing the potential for terrible harm. If an all-knowing God foresaw the immense suffering that would come from free will, why grant it without maybe some better safeguards or intervening in the worst cases? It still leaves this lingering feeling of, well, maybe divine complicity, or at least a kind of acceptance of terrible harm that's hard to grasp. And it doesn't fully explain suffering from things like natural disasters or diseases, which don't seem directly tied to individual human choices.
So yeah, it's clear these standard answers, while they try, they often leave us feeling unsatisfied, they struggle with innocent suffering, or they shift responsibility in ways that don't quite mesh with an all-loving, all-powerful God. So if these answers leave us wanting, where do we go from here? Is there another way to look at this? Our sources point towards a really major shift in perspective now coming from the Indian traditions. It's often seen as a much more compelling framework, the law of karma. And this isn't just that casual, what goes around comes around idea. It's presented as a fundamental, impersonal cosmic law, cause and effect, like a huge accounting system. And crucially, it operates not just in this life, but across many lifetimes.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, karma offers this incredibly sophisticated way to understand suffering without making a benevolent God the direct cause. The mechanics are seen as quite precise. Every thought, word, action, positive or negative, sets off a ripple, a consequence that eventually comes back to the source. So we reap what we sow, whether the sowing happened yesterday or many, many lifetimes ago. Think of it less like divine punishment and more like, well, a natural law, like gravity, but for actions and consequences. The universe balancing its own books, in a way.
So it's impersonal, not a judgment from God.
That's the key distinction, yes. It's vital. Karma doesn't make God the author of suffering. Suffering comes directly from our own actions, our own deeds. It creates a morally coherent system where each individual is essentially the architect of their own experiences, their own destiny, and yes, their own suffering. Even if you don't remember the specific actions from past lives causing current troubles, the consequences are still unfolding according to that past cause. It puts the responsibility squarely back on us, you see. Not God randomly punishing people. It's the impersonal playing out of causes we initiated.
Okay, I can see how that offers a different kind of explanation.
Right. And the benefit is, it provides a coherent, impersonal reason for why seemingly innocent people suffer. That child born with a terrible illness. From this perspective, it's not God being cruel. It's the playing out of causes from a past existence. It offers a rational framework, though sometimes a tough one, for the huge differences we see in people's lives, fortunes, talents, suffering. Things that seem random if you only look at one lifetime and assume a single benevolent God is pulling all the strings. It explains why some seem born to guise, others to hardship. It suggests a kind of cosmic justice unfolding over vast stretches of time, bringing order to apparent chaos.
That makes sense as a framework for understanding why things happen within the world.
It does. But while karma is incredibly powerful and offers a more coherent explanation than many Western answers by focusing on individual responsibility, it's also, well, not without its own complexities. It explains the how of suffering within the manifested world, within this cycle of cause and effect. But it doesn't necessarily tackle the ultimate nature of suffering itself or the ultimate reality of the world where karma operates. It explains the mechanism, maybe not the ultimate why of existence. which suggests there's maybe a deeper layer still, a more radical viewpoint. And that's where we get into the profound insights of Advaita Vedanta.
Okay, so now it gets really transformative, you're saying, moving beyond even karma to Vedanta's response, which you said is, well, really challenging. It sounds like it asks us to rethink everything, our basic assumptions about reality, the world, ourselves. The core idea you mentioned is in that Sanskrit phrase, Brahmasata, Jagat Mithya, Jyobrahmavana Para.
That's it. That's the heart of it.
Can you break that down for us? It sounds fundamental.
Absolutely. It means Brahman alone is real, the world is an appearance, and you are none other than Brahman. So first, Brahman. It's crucial to understand this isn't God like a person on a throne. Brahman is ultimate reality. The one fundamental truth, unchanging, undifferentiated, the ground of all being, pure existence, pure consciousness, pure bliss.
Right.
That's Brahman.
Okay, the ultimate ground of everything.
Exactly. And then there's Maya. If Brahman is the reality, Maya is the, well, the creative power, the cosmic illusion. It's what makes the world, with all its diversity, its seeming solidity, appear real to us. Think of a really vivid dream.
Right.
While you're in it, it feels totally real, right? The emotions, the events, the people, all feel solid.
Completely convincing.
But when you wake up, you realize it was just an appearance, not ultimately real in the same way. Maya is like that on a cosmic scale.
Yeah.
Incredibly convincing while we're immersed in it, but ultimately an appearance, a projection. It doesn't exist independently from Brahman. It's like light and shadow playing on the screen of reality.
Wow. Okay, so if the world itself is an appearance, what does that mean for suffering?
That's the mind-bending implication. If the world, with all its joys and horrors, good and evil, if it's not ultimately real, if it's just an appearance, like a dream, woven by Maya, then asking, is evil part of Brahman becomes, well, a flawed question, like asking if the monster in your dream is part of your bedroom furniture. The categories just don't apply in the same way.
Because good and evil only exist within that appearance, within Maya.
Precisely. From the ultimate perspective, Brahman's perspective, neither good nor evil truly exists in Brahman. These dualities, pleasure, pain, good, evil, birth, death, they belong entirely to the world of appearance, to Maya. They're distinctions we perceive, categories we need to navigate the apparent world. But Brahman is non-dual. It's beyond all those distinctions, all pairs of opposites. It's pure, unified being. So good and evil just don't apply to it. They're part of the movie playing out, not the screen itself. The screen remains untouched.
That's a huge concept to grasp. It's almost counterintuitive. Is there a way to make it feel more concrete?
Yes, Vedantic uses a classic analogy for this. It's really powerful. The rope snake analogy. Imagine you're walking alone, maybe late at night, paths dimly lit, or you're in a dark room, shadows everywhere, your eyes are straining. You see something on the ground ahead, dark, long, coiled, looks like a head, and instantly your mind jumps. Conditioned by fear, it screams, snake. Maybe a dangerous one.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that. Instant panic.
Exactly. And what happens then? The reaction is immediate, visceral, totally real to you.
Heart pounds, adrenaline surges.
Right, palms sweat, muscles tense, maybe gasp, freeze in terror. You feel this overwhelming fear, this sense of imminent danger, doom.
That feeling of suffering, the terror, it's completely real in that moment. Your body believes it.
Utterly real to you. As long as you perceive the snake, the suffering is absolute. It dictates your reality.
So what changes it?
This is the turning point, the revelation. Imagine someone flips a light switch, or the moon comes out bright. Light floods the scene, and you see it clearly. With a gasp of relief, you realize it was just a rope all along. It was always just a rope. Mistaken perception of the dark. The mind projecting fear onto an unclear object.
And fear just vanishes.
Instantly, completely. The
Yeah.
pounding heart stops, the panic dissolves. Why? Because the snake, the source of that intense suffering, never actually existed. It was an illusion born of darkness and misperception. The suffering was real only as long as the illusion held sway.
So you're saying our suffering in the world is like the fear of that non-existent snake?
In a profound way, yes. Suffering feels incredibly real within the illusion of the world. Within Maya, we experience it intensely, just like the fear of the snake. But from the standpoint of your true nature, which Vedanta says is Brahman, ultimate reality, pure consciousness, that suffering is ultimately unfounded. It appeared real, it caused distress, but its basis was illusory, like the snake. From the absolute viewpoint of Brahman, nothing ever truly happened in the ultimate sense. No real creation, no birth, no death, no suffering, no good, no evil. Only Satchitananda. Existence, consciousness, bliss, pure, unchanging.
Wow. But that does raise a huge question. How can something feel so intensely real, so painful, yet be ultimately unfounded? That disconnect is hard to bridge.
It is. And that very question, that tension between felt experience and ultimate truth, leads us to a really pivotal story about Sri Ramakrishna. He was this great spiritual master in 19th century India, hugely influential. And someone asked him directly, probably with that same raw frustration we feel, why is there so much suffering if God exists? If God is good, why allow this? Ramakrishna's first answer was symbolic, often heard. It is the Leela of God, the divine play, suggesting creation with all its ups and downs is like God's spontaneous, joyful game beyond our full understanding.
But that can sound dismissive of real pain, can it? Like saying it's just a game when people are dying.
Exactly. And the person asking felt that. They pushed back immediately. They said, it may be Leela play for God, but it is death for us. That's the human cry, isn't it? Highlighting that massive gap between some abstract divine perspective and our agonizing lived reality. They wanted an answer for their agony.
So what did Ramakrishna say then?
This is where his genius truly transforms the whole thing.
Right.
He didn't offer another explanation about suffering. He turned the question right back on the questioner. With piercing insight, not judgment, he asked, death to us, you say, but who are you? Do you know who you are?
Slight pause.
Wow.
That question. It's the absolute turning point. It shifts the focus completely away from the external problem, God's role, the suffering out there, and onto the internal identity of the person asking. Ramakrishna saw the real issue wasn't why is there suffering?
No.
It was who is it that thinks they are suffering? Or who do you mistake yourself to be that you experience this suffering?
Because if you don't know your true self, then suffering seems absolute, unbearable. We identify with this limited body that feels pain, gets sick, dies. We identify with the mind that grieves, worries, feels loss. From that limited viewpoint, suffering is totally real. But once you realize your true nature is Brahman, once you experientially grasp Tattvamasi, that thou art, meaning you are that ultimate reality, untouched by the body, the mind, the world's illusions, then the question, why does suffering exist, dissolves. It loses its footing. The who that suffers is seen as part of the illusion, a temporary identification. It's fascinating, isn't it, how changing the focus from the problem to the perceiver can make the problem itself just evaporate, instead of solving it intellectually.
That shift is incredible, but it also sounds easy to misunderstand. Like, does it mean everything is divine, even terrible things?
That's a really important point. And it brings us to a crucial clarification made by Swami Vivekananda, who brought Vedanta to the West. People do sometimes misunderstand. Our sources mention a disciple saying to Vivekananda, Master, you taught us that all is God. It's a natural conclusion maybe when you hear Brahman alone is real, you think, okay, so everything must be God. Suffering, evil, everything is divine.
Right, that seems like a logical leap.
But Vivekananda corrected him immediately, very precisely. He said, I have never said that all is God. I have said God alone is.
Okay. All is God versus God alone is. That sounds subtle. What's the difference?
It's subtle but absolutely critical. It's not just semantics. It's key to the ethical understanding. If all is God, then yes, evil, cruelty, suffering, they'd be inherently divine. Which is morally confusing, right? It could justify anything.
Yeah, it dissolves any basis for ethics.
Exactly. But God alone means Brahman is the only ultimate reality. The substance. Everything else, good, evil, pleasure, pain, are appearances within that reality, like images on the screen. It doesn't mean the cruelty is itself divine. It means the underlying reality, the canvas, is Brahman.
So Brahman is beyond both good and evil. They're just concepts within the appearance.
Yes, they are dualities within Maya, necessary for life within the illusion, relative concepts, not absolute. So the spiritual journey isn't about accepting evil as divine. Not at all. It's a progression. First, you have to evolve from harmful actions to good actions. Morality, compassion, ethics, that's essential groundwork, purifying the mind. But then, to reach the ultimate reality, you have to transcend both good and evil. Go beyond all dualities to realize the non-dual truth where those labels don't ultimately apply.
From duality to transcendence.
And this ties into cosmic cycles, too. People ask, is the universe real? Does it have a beginning and end? Well, Vedic thought says yes, the universe goes through cycles. Creation, projection, siddhi, sustenance, and pralaya, dissolution. Huge, vast cycles.
Like cosmic breaths.
Kind of. Universes appear, last for eons, dissolve back, then emerge again. But here's the Vedantic point. These cycles themselves are also within Maya. They are part of the grand illusion. Like a recurring dream. It seems real while it lasts, full of events, but it's a projection onto the screen of Brahman. The universe is a cosmic dream. There's a quote from the Madhukya Karika, a key text, that puts it incredibly radically. It says something like, there is no creation, no dissolution, no bondage, no seeker, no liberated soul, and no liberation. This is the highest truth.
Wow. No creation, no liberation. That basically wipes the slate clean.
From the absolute perspective, yes. It says all that talk, creation, suffering, seeking, even being freed only makes sense from the limited viewpoint of the soul caught in Maya, identified with the body-mind. From Brahman's standpoint, the ultimate truth, none of that ever truly happened. There's only the eternal, unchanging, non-dual reality, beyond all concepts.
What an incredible arc. We started with that raw human question about suffering, went through theological debates, karma's intricate system, and landed in Vedanta's radical non-duality, which basically reframes reality itself, seeing suffering as an appearance within an illusion like the snake that was always a rope. That ultimate insight seems to be about shifting perspective so fundamentally that the problem itself changes shape or even dissolves. So reflecting on all this, what does it mean for you, listening now? How might this change the way you view life's challenges, your own existence?
That's really the core question, isn't it? These deep dives into suffering, evil, reality. They aren't just for philosophers. They're invitations for your own continued deep inquiry. Because while these theories, these philosophies, karma, Vedanta, Maya, they offer immense intellectual comfort, a framework for understanding. Remember where they ultimately point. True, lasting peace, the real transcendence of suffering. It doesn't come just from understanding these ideas intellectually. It comes, as the sages taught, from Moko, liberation, self-realization, from directly discovering the unchanging, eternal nature of your own self. As the Upanishads say, the knower of the self transcends sorrow. Realizing that you are not the body that suffers, not the mind that grieves. You are the eternal witness. You are Brahman. The final answer isn't found in a book or an explanation like this one, ultimately. It's found in that direct discovery of your own true nature. Realizing you were never truly born, will never truly die, and in the deepest sense, never truly suffered. That realization alone is what brings true, unshakable peace. So perhaps let this exploration be a spark. A starting point for your own journey beyond just thinking about it, towards potentially experiencing that unchanging core of your being. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.